Welcome to True Crime Garage. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Nick, and with me, as always, is a man who has stocked up on the moisturizer for this year's dry January. Here is the captain.
Put the lotion in the basket. It's good to be seen and good to see you. Thanks for listening. Thanks for telling a friend.
Today we are drinking Cloud Candy, a New England IPA brewed by the mighty Squirrel Brewing Company. Cloud Candy is known for its hazy appearance and tropical fruit notes. It's hazy, and it has notes of papaya, mango, and star fruit that dominate the flavor profile. ABV, 6.5%, garage grade 4 out of 5 bottle caps. And let's give some cheers to our good friends for helping us fill up the old garage fridge. First up, a shout out to Courtney in Brookfield, Wisconsin.
And a big We Like Your Chip goes out to Kate in Prosper, Texas.
And last but certainly not least, I have no idea how many people we're giving a cheers to here, Captain, but we're giving a cheers to the Misfits of Loudonville, Ohio. I've been there, and that place is filled with misfits. So cheers to you, Misfits in Loudonville, Ohio, and cheers to everyone who went to truecrimegarage.com and donated to this week's beer fund.
Yeah, BWRUN Beer Run. If you need more True Crime Garage for your earballs, and let me tell you, you do. New Year's resolution 2026, more True Crime Garage for your earballs. You can subscribe to us on YouTube. You could subscribe to us on Patreon. You could subscribe to us on Apple Podcast. And if you do, we'll like your jib. And that's enough of the business.
All right, everybody, gather around, grab a chair, grab a beer. Let's talk some true crime. A no-body death investigation is a homicide case where the victim's body is never found. It's an investigation where circumstantial evidence is key. Without a body, investigators rely heavily on evidence such as digital forensics, like text, calls, other communications and location data, financial activity, such as unusual transactions or lack of activity from the victim. Witness statements and then later testimony are key as well. Accounts of arguments, abuse, threats, a history of violence and suspicious behavior, and physical evidence is paramount. Bullet casings, fibers, DNA, and of course, blood evidence can be the most damning. For prosecutors, it is the same, but also very necessary to establish a strong motive for the murder. Both must be able to produce enough evidence to prove that the victim is in fact deceased and that the suspect is in fact responsible for killing the victim. Now, this might surprise you, but no-body homicide court cases, though rare, often have conviction rates around 85%. This is higher than typical murder cases because the evidence must be overwhelming for prosecutors to proceed. This success rate is a clear sign of the power of meticulous police work. This is True Crime Garage. Ana Walshe, a mother of 3 from Cohasset, Massachusetts, was last seen on New Year's Day 2023. Her husband, Brian Walshe, was eventually charged with her murder. In fact, just shortly after she went missing. The complicated part of this, Captain, is Anna's body has never been found, and there's a lot of mystery as to what was going on and who would be responsible for this woman being missing. Now, Brian and Ana Walshe had 3 children, together. They lived in Cohasset, Massachusetts, a coastal suburb located 20 miles south of Boston. And Cohasset is located on the corner of South Shore where Greater Boston Harbor ends and Massachusetts Bay begins. This is an affluent seaside community with a small population of just under 9,000 people. It's a very safe community with very little violence. In fact, Police Chief William Quigley said there hasn't been a murder in town since at least 1995 when he first joined the force.
Yeah, you want to picture a setting or a city like Cape Side from the hit TV show from the WB, Dawson's Creek.
And of course, we already mentioned that Brian and Ana Walshe were married together. They did have kids. Another unfortunate part of this story, they have 3 sons, all young boys.
Yeah, all 3 of their kids were under the age of 6 years old.
In the early 2000s, Ana immigrated from Serbia to come to this great country. When she gets here, she works various jobs. She married a chef. This couple moves to Massachusetts. In early 2008, Ana meets Brian Walshe while she's working as a reservations manager. Around the same time here, Captain, Ana and her then husband relocated to Washington, D.C. In 2011, Brian Walshe visits a friend who is living in South Korea. So he offers to sell his friend's art collection.
Yeah.
This includes 2 original Andy Warhol shadow paintings.
If it's not the Campbell soup, I don't want it.
I only know about 3 Andy Warhol paintings. So forgive me when I see shadow paintings. I don't know exactly which ones they are talking about. But
Andy Warhol he's an icon. Right?
Oh, of course.
He's not just an artiste, my friend. He's an icon as far as I'd put him as an icon in late 70s to the 80s.
So Walshe sells these shadow paintings, the authentic shadow paintings, we should say, for his friend, sells them to a U.S. gallery. These paintings are then resold several times. Eventually, my understanding is they end up outside of the United States.
Right.
But selling off the friend's art collection gives Brian Walshe this brilliant idea to have some replicas made of the famous shadow paintings.
Some forgeries.
That's right. So he can sell them off, but he wants to pass them off, of course, as the originals because they would be very, very valuable. I believe one of them was valued at over $200,000. In 2013, Ana and Brian Walshe, they start dating. Now, it's not until sometime the following year that her divorce to the chef is finalized. So in 2014, her divorce is finalized. And sometime in 2014, Ana texts a friend of Brian's stating that Brian is a violent person. And she later reports to police that her boyfriend from Boston threatened to kill her and her friends. But in this report, in this complaint, she does not name Brian Walshe in this complaint. So there's going to be no charges that will be brought forward from this police report. In 2015, Brian Walshe sells the fake shadow paintings. Success.
Cha-ching.
He sold them to a buyer in France. In December of 2015, Ana and Brian get married. The couple moves in with Brian's mother at 225 Beacon Street in Boston.
Yeah, and just a little heads up. If you have a boyfriend that threatens to kill you and your friends, that's a deal breaker. You should move on with your life. Dump the loser. Move on with your life. But she didn't. She ends up marrying him.
In July of 2016, their first son is born. This is when the couple begins flipping properties. And I have here, I question this statement, but I seen in at least one report that they were also renting out properties at some point. Her profession changes. She transitions from the hospitality industry to real estate. And Ana joins this firm that specializes in listing luxury homes. Back to the fake paintings, the fake artwork. The buyer discovers 2 Andy Warhol shadow paintings for, so the way that this went down, Brian lists these air quote famous paintings, or the fakes, the knockoffs, on eBay. He finds this buyer, and the two decide that, hey, we're going to do this offline. Brian Walshe includes in the listing of this sale a picture of an invoice showing the purchase of the Warhol Foundation paintings and the Warhol Foundation numbers that accompany those. So he has legitimate paperwork, right? Because he originally had the real
legitimate paperwork
paintings in his possession. Yeah. So he made forgeries of the legitimate paperwork too, to go along with the fake paintings that he's selling. He's trying to move these fast because he lists them, as we said, they're worth over $200,000. He's listing them for only $100,000. So if you're a buyer and you see a deal like that, remember, a lot of times, if it seems too good to be true, it is.
Right.
So this buyer and him agree to do this offline outside of eBay, and the agreed price is $80,000. And we know that because they end up signing a contract together, and then the buyer gives Brian Walshe a cashier's check for $80,000. Brian Walshe deposits the check into his bank account, and then he starts withdrawing money from this bank account, using that money from the forgeries almost immediately. And he uses, I think, over $30,000 of it in the first 2 weeks. Now, at some point, this buyer will discover that, hey, these things, they're not real.
Yeah. See, I always wondered too about this. Was there something in the paintings or some kind of research that was done to the paintings to figure out that there are forgeries, or was it the paperwork?
It's a couple of things. So the buyer decides to remove the paintings from the frames that they came in. And that's when they start to put together that, hey, these things don't look quite right. So that, for one, the canvas looked too new to be authentic. There were staples that were found, and there were no Warhol Foundation authentication stamps on the actual artwork. So there's a discrepancy basically between what he purchased and the photos he could see on eBay on the original listing. It's not until October of 2018 that Brian Walshe is arrested for selling these fake Andy Warhol paintings.
Yeah, I'm guessing this is a felony because of the price he was scamming this individual out of. What, $160,000?
$80,000.
Yeah, but I thought there was two paintings.
There are, but I think that they were sold as a pair, I believe. Right. I may have misspoke. But yeah, you're right. Regardless, it's going to be a substantial amount of money.
Wouldn't it be funny if they opened up the paintings? It just looked like the painting was Xeroxed. I think there's something wrong here, Sherlock.
Now, this next part, it makes it a little bit complicated, and for our timeline anyway. He's going to eventually plead guilty to this, but that won't take place until April of 2021. And when he does plead guilty to this, he gets house arrest while he's awaiting sentencing for this. It's a complicated matter. We'll circle back to it here in a bit. But from my understanding here, Captain, there's 4 counts that he's originally charged with, and he'll ultimately plead guilty to 3 of those 4 counts. And the punishment for this, there's going to be a term of incarceration, supervised release, so some kind of parole, fines, restitution that will need to be paid as well. So at this time, Brian Walshe, he's then 46, he would ultimately plead guilty to 1 count of wire fraud, 1 count of interstate transportation for a scheme to defraud, 1 count of possession of converted goods, an unlawful monetary transaction. The charge of wire fraud, you could serve up to 20 years in prison for that. My guess is that probably most people don't, but you could serve up to 20 years in prison for that, 3 years of supervised release, and a fine of $250,000. The charge of interstate transportation for a scheme to defraud comes with up to 10 years in prison, 3 years of supervised release, and a fine of $250,000. And then the charge of possession of converted goods is another 10-year in prison, 3 years of supervised release, and a fine of $250,000.
Yeah, but a lot of times in these cases where there's no victim, as far as nobody was attacked, nobody was beat up, nobody was killed, that normally if you make a plea deal, that your sentences are going to be dramatically reduced from what the maximum penalty normally is.
Yes. So ultimately what he's going to get is he's sentenced to 37 months in prison, 3 years of supervised release, and ordered to pay restitution of $475,000. As said, that portion of the story is kind of dragging on, right? From 2000 and what did we say, 18 all the way up to 2021. And it's still lingering when this next stuff starts to happen. Okay. So in February of 2022, Ana is working in a new role. She's the regional general manager for a company called Tishman Speyer in Washington, D.C. So they still live in Massachusetts, and she's commuting every week to and from D.C. So she'll go and stay in D.C. where her work is for the week and then come home basically on the weekends.
Yeah. Tough situation when you have 3 sons under the age of 6.
Yes. And Brian and the sons are in Cohasset living in a rental property at this time. And as said, Ana's splitting her time between Washington, D.C. and Cohasset on the weekend. In November of that year, Ana Walshe is having an affair with a man who lives in D.C. She spends Thanksgiving 2022 with him outside of the country.
Yeah, I believe at some point she tells her husband, Brian, that she has a crush on this individual, but I don't think she admits to him at the time that she's having an affair.
Yes. And so in December of 2022, Brian's mother hires a private investigator. His name is Jeremy Dozer, to conduct surveillance on Ana Walshe. They want to catch her in the act.
Yeah, it seems like Brian comes from a little bit of money. I mean, it also makes sense with this whole art deal, this fraudulent art deal. But to me, he seems like a somewhat smart, but doesn't know how to follow through. But for the most part, he's a moron.
Well, and I don't think that they had a lot of, look, we know that there was an affair going on, but it doesn't sound like the private investigator was able to come up with a whole bunch of incriminating evidence of the affair. Now, let's go to Christmas Eve 2022, December 24th, 2022. And again, it seems like she's spending this day, or at least a portion of this day, with the boyfriend. Then eventually spends part of Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. It's Christmas Day when she goes back to Massachusetts. Of course, Brian and others are upset that she missed Christmas Eve and most of Christmas Day with her family.
Right. And a lot of these individuals that are having affairs, look, if you're married and your marriage sucks and you got some crush on this guy, fine. You know, that happens. But when you have kids involved, grow the fuck up, right? And it's like, if you don't want to be with their father and you want to be with this other guy, then break it off, get a divorce, and then go start a new life. But when they're doing this, there is a selfishness aspect of this situation, and you just feel bad for these 3 young children because they have to deal with the mom doing this, but you have then the ultimate fallout of what their horrible douchebag father is going to do.
Yes, and there's a lot of back and forth between Massachusetts and Washington, D.C. in this story, so I apologize for the complexity of it, but it is as it is here. Now, speaking of divorce, Captain, on December 27th, Brian Walshe Google searched What's the best state to divorce for a man?
But also, this is probably why his mother gets a private investigator, because this is all roads are leading to them getting a divorce. So by getting the private investigator, and again, you have some states that are at fault states. So that's what he's trying to do. Oh, well, if she's at fault, then maybe I get custody. Maybe she ends up having to pay me a bunch of money.
Mm-hmm.
But what's insane to me is like if I sold some fake paintings, which I'm not saying I'm going to, but if I did and I was caught and I was going to have to spend 3 years in prison, I probably could do 3 years in prison. But he has to pay back almost $500,000. Like at that point, I'm just jumping off a goddamn bridge.
Well, and I'm not trying to defend anybody having an affair, but we also should keep in mind too, on her end, she's got to be thinking like, pretty soon this guy's going to go away to prison for 3 years.
Right.
And it doesn't seem like their relationship was that great outside of the children to begin with. So now we are at December 28th during a dinner with a friend. She's now in Washington, D.C., and the friend would later report that they believe that Ana became uncharacteristically upset. She was talking to her friend about Brian Walshe, who is going to be incarcerated as a result of that federal case. She has been preparing to leave him, and she tells this friend that she wants to take the children to Washington, D.C. once the split happens. Now, 3 days later, the happy couple, they're hosting a New Year's Eve dinner with a friend of theirs.
This makes no sense to me.
We have a report of Ana being last seen at 1 a.m. or maybe even 1:30 a.m. Okay, so let's go to New Year's Day, January 1st, 2023. Let's say 1:30 a.m. Brian and Ana went to bed shortly after that friend left. This seems to be the agreed upon time that she's last seen, 1 or 1:30 that night. When police come knocking and asking about where Ana may be, Brian Walshe is going to tell police that his wife Ana had to leave for some kind of work emergency and had to fly to Washington, D.C. for her job, and that she actually left on January 1st, 2023.
All right, we are back. You filthy animals, tall cans
back,
in the
Jack.
air. Cheers to you, Colonel.
Cheers to you, my friend.
Yeah, so it's weird because it seems like she was reported missing by her job and not anybody in the family, which red flag there.
Yeah, so she's first reported missing by the coworkers, and then later he's going to say, "Oh yeah, she is missing. This is when I last saw her." So she's not reported missing for a couple of days. And we talked about this, I feel like a dozen times on this show, but anytime we have these cases that seem to take place around Christmas or New Year's, the holidays really kind of jam things up for people reporting things quickly. People get busy, and it's just the natural state of things. If you don't have to work, if you're off for the holidays, nobody really knows that you're missing for a period of time, because we now know she's been missing since January 1st, not reported until the 4th. Brian tells the police eventually on the 4th that his wife left sometime between 4 and 6 a.m., that she got a ride share to the airport, and she was going to have to go to Washington, D.C. That's about the window of time that he says that she leaves. What we also know that's going on from 4:55 a.m. up until 1:20 p.m., Brian Walshe conducts 20 graphic Google searches about disposing a body, cleaning up blood, dismemberment, body decomposition, embalming. So at 4:55 a.m., the search was how long before a body starts to smell? 3 minutes later, how to stop a body from decomposing? Less than an hour later, this is just before 6 a.m., 10 ways to dispose of a dead body if you really need to. If you really need to is the strange part of that.
Yeah.
Like 6:25 a.m., how long for someone to be missing to inherit? 6:34, can you throw away body parts? 9:29 a.m., what does formaldehyde do? 9:34, how long does DNA last? 1 minute before 10 a.m., can identification be made on partial remains? 11:34 a.m., dismemberment and the best ways to dispose of a body. 10 minutes later, how to clean blood from wooden floor. 4 minutes before noon, luminol to detect blood. 1:08 p.m., what happens when you put body parts in ammonia? 1:21 p.m., is it better to put crime scene clothes away or wash them? 5:30 p.m., surveillance video shows Brian Walshe and his vehicle going to a dumpster. This is in the parking lot of a liquor store. And he's throwing something in that dumpster. He can be seen throwing something in that dumpster before he goes back and gets in his car and drives away.
Yeah, and that's one surveillance footage. There's going to be more that tracks Brian's movements, but I'm guessing that there's possibly multiple other stops that he made that we don't have surveillance footage of.
Yeah, so there's between 5:30 p.m. that night and about 8 p.m. that night, we don't know exactly where he was or what he was up to, but we know he returns home at approximately 8 p.m. that night. So we have 2.5 hours of, I mean, he could be, I hate to say it, but my guess is he's driving around and disposing of items around in several different parts of town.
So the shopping spree that he went on is actually before this, correct?
Well, so no. So it's January 2nd, the following day is when he's seen at a Home Depot store, and he's wearing gloves and he's wearing like a surgical mask, the mask that we were wearing during COVID.
Right.
And this is when he's seen purchasing over $400 worth of cleaning supplies.
Wasn't this a Lowe's?
I have Home Depot in my notes here, but
because what I have is that he went to Lowe's, he went to CVS, and he went to Home Goods.
Yes.
I could be wrong. He could have went to Home Depot as well.
Forgive me, because we both are right. He's doing these shopping trips on 2 days. Okay. So actually, before he goes to that dumpster, you're absolutely right. He claims that he spent the day visiting his mother on January 1st.
His mother's a trip.
And that he's running errands for her. Okay. So we don't have any surveillance for this, but it's believed that he went to a CVS and a Whole Foods. The Lowe's trip, Captain, happens on the 4th. Whatever he's doing, he's not doing it very quickly. The shopping trip on January 2nd is Home Depot in Rockland, and he purchases tarps, mops, tape, a hatchet, and gloves, and he purchased this with cash. These are a cash buy here. And
yeah,
then
I think
later,
all of his transactions are going to be cash, except for one that I think he made with a gift card.
Later that day, his internet searches include hacksaw best tool to dismember, can you be charged with murder without a body, and can you identify a body with broken teeth?
Some very incriminating searches.
January 3rd, there was supposed to be a flight. Anna was supposed to have a flight. She never boards this plane. And on the same day, we have more internet searches. One at 1 p.m. that says, what happens to hair on a dead body? 11 minutes later, what is the rate of decomposition on a body found in a plastic bag compared to on a surface in the woods? Also searched, can baking soda mask or make a body smell good? And then at 4:27 p.m., surveillance shows Brian disposing of heavy trash bags at 3 apartment complex dumpsters.
Yeah, and on one of the shopping trips, we see Brian on surveillance footage, but he's with his 6-year-old son.
Classy move.
And he does one of those self-checkout And as he's doing the self-checkout, so we have him on the camera of the self-checkout, but he has his son help him scan the items that he's purchasing. It's pretty haunting when you think of that image.
Well, and later on that third, he goes to several apartment complexes, and it's believed that he's disposing of items in the dumpsters at these different apartment complexes. On January 4th, it's when he visited a Home Goods and a TJ Maxx to buy towels and bath mats, and then visited the Lowe's, which is the one that, if anybody's caught pieces of this story on the news, it's been on the news a lot lately. This is the picture that you're seeing here. This part in the timeline is where he can be seen at the Lowe's, and he's buying a squeegee or squeegees and a trash can and some other items. Now, on this same day, key here is this is when Ana is reported missing by her coworkers. Remember, Brian Walsh claims to police that, I last saw her early on January 1st, and she had to take a ride share to Boston Logan International Airport.
Yeah, but even if you're having troubles in your marriage, you're still married, you're responsible for the children. How many times is he trying to contact her within that period? And I think it would be reasonable, if he has nothing to do with her disappearance, it's reasonable for him to call cops as soon as January 2nd when he goes, hey, I'm calling her phone, and I saw her leave, and she took this ride share, and she was going to jump on a plane because she had this emergency at her work. Well, I can't get a hold of her. But that never happens. He never reports her missing ever.
When they go to do this welfare check and they talk to him, they notice that there's a plastic liner inside his vehicle.
Not good.
Yeah, this is going to give them probable cause here. And then the topper is going to be, he says that she left for emergency work problem on the 1st, right? Well, when they ping her phone, they track her phone is pinging as it's still inside their home.
Yeah.
On January 2nd.
And again, if you had a concerned husband that was trying to call her, chances are he would have found her phone. And then that would be, again, reason to call the police and say, hey, my wife went to this emergency work thing, but she left her phone. I can't get a hold of her. Nobody's heard from her. But none of this happens.
Yeah, and so with his vehicle, they later positively detected blood inside that vehicle.
Yeah.
On January 5th, 2023, there's a public appeal issued by the police. They are asking people to search their yards. The police are actively searching the wooded areas, and they're collecting video evidence and hoping to figure out where she may have went or what happened to Ana Walshe, who was age 39 at the time. The public appeal is a missing persons appeal, right? They're giving out her description. She's 5'2" tall, weighs about 115 pounds, brown hair, brown eyes, olive complexion. They're, of course, not getting any calls or any tips as to where she may be. The search efforts for her included canine teams and state police air units. They had 20 troopers, Captain. 20 state troopers. Now let's get to January 8th here, Captain. Brian Walsh is questioned by investigators about his searches on the internet and the searches that they discovered on his 6-year-old son's iPad. So they have him at the station conducting a thorough interview of him, and they are equipped with information saying, hey, somebody in your home using this iPad and using your home internet is searching for things like, does the dishwasher remove blood from a knife?
Yeah.
How to stop a body from decomposing. And that's when Brian should have said, my son's into some weird shit.
Yeah.
I've confiscated the iPad.
Some say he's on the spectrum of being a Jeffrey Dahmer type.
So shortly after all of this, Captain, we have Brian, who is arrested, and he is initially charged with misleading the police in an investigation. But it was on January 8th that police revealed that they found blood and a broken knife in the family's basement, and that they had that surveillance footage of Brian Walsh wearing a medical mask and surgical gloves, purchasing those cleaning supplies at the Home Depot, and then you referenced some of the other purchases and surveillance footage of those as well.
This evidence piling up goes from an anthill to a giant mountain pretty quick.
So he's wearing, this is what's difficult though, because he's wearing this monitoring bracelet, because remember, he got caught selling the fake Andy Warhol paintings.
Right.
So he's under house arrest. He's allowed to leave the home for things like going to doctor's appointments and the grocery store. And from my understanding, I hate when they call these monitoring bracelets. This one doesn't have GPS tracking on it, from my understanding. So how much monitoring are they doing? It almost seems like this thing is no different than the watch I wear. My guess is that maybe it triggers some kind of alert if he's gone for
too long.
I hope there is some actual monitoring that's being done. So we do know that the police also attempted to find items in the local landfill there, as the landfill would be the obvious destination for whatever was in those dumpsters. And again, he went to multiple dumpsters. It would be 10 days later that he's eventually charged with murder. And then it would be March of 2023 when he was actually indicted by a grand jury. So this is 3 charges here, Captain: murder, misleading a police investigation, and improper transport of a human body.
Yeah, he's what you call a real piece of shit.
The jury selection for his trial took place this November 2025. As if this story's not weird enough, look at all this evidence they have against him. At some point, Brian's going to switch from, hey, innocent, to now he's got a story to tell us, right? So yeah. Brian's defense...
And hold on, it's a whale of a story.
Yes. Brian's defense is that Ana Walshe died suddenly of some kind of unexplained death. Okay, so he says, I found her unresponsive in our bed. She wouldn't wake up. This was after we were celebrating New Year's Eve. He says he panicked and started searching the internet how to dispose of the body, because he's saying, and eventually his defense attorney, Larry Tipton, will be saying this as well, that no one would believe me that she just, one minute she's alive and the next minute she's dead. So I panicked and had to dispose of her.
Yeah, she was a young, healthy woman, and because of all their problems, and everybody knows they're heading to a divorce. He's heading to prison. He's going to be responsible for all this money that he has to pay back because he's going to prison. He's going to lose probably custody of his children. So this isn't going good for him at all. But either way, this is the mother of your children. If you find her dead in your home, what do you do about it? Do you try to rescue her? Do you try to save her? Do you try to call 911? At least Google search, how does somebody die suddenly? But that's not what the Google searches are. The Google searches are how to dismember a body and how to basically dispose of this body.
Yes, prosecutors, they were stating that they believe that Brian Walshe was motivated by money. He was the sole beneficiary of his wife's over $2 million life insurance policy, and also motivated by the affair that she was having with the realtor in Washington, D.C. Now, his defense team is going to say, no, not so fast. He didn't kill his wife. They called him a loving husband and father who didn't even know about the affair. The closing arguments by the prosecution state that Brian Walshe methodically cut up the body of Ana Walshe and disposed of her body parts in different dumpsters, saying, quote, he needed her dead, end quote. The jury deliberation started on Friday, December 12th in the afternoon. And
wait, before we get to that though, because what the jury wasn't privy to during the whole trials, that Brian already pled guilty to certain crimes.
Yes.
And they were made aware of that, I believe, by the judge right before they were in deliberations to come up with a verdict. A lot of people just thought, man, this is an open shut case, so the verdict's going to come back pretty quickly. It didn't. But I wonder if being hit with this very damning and crazy information right before you go into deliberations, is that part of the holdup of them coming up with a verdict?
Well, I have that they came up. So it was December 15th, the following Monday, that he's found guilty of murder in the first degree. And it was, yes, nearly 2 weeks of testimony in Norfolk County Superior Court. And you're absolutely right, Captain. I'm with you. It's like, so this guy's whole defense is, yeah, I disposed of her body. I'm not going to tell you where I put her, and you're not going to be able to recover her, but I didn't kill her. You know, it's like one of the most bizarre defenses I've ever heard. So I'm with you. I thought 2 days is the only test. But when you have the evidence and you have the ability to do so, especially when you don't have a body, you have to lay it on pretty thick, right? And you have to go over in detail so the jury is made aware of how strong your case is, leaving no question about what our accusations are and that we believe them to be 100% true. And
Right.
of course, we know that the jury agreed with that. There was no reaction in the courtroom from Brian Walsh. I don't know if you saw this, but there was something on court TV where they zoomed in on his face when they were getting ready to read the verdict. After he's announced that he's guilty, he's handcuffed, shackled, and they take him out of the courtroom. Eventually, we will learn that he's going to receive a life in prison sentence for killing his wife, Ana Walshe. And those 3 young children are now in state custody, from my understanding.
Brian Walsh had what seems to be a reputable defense team, but a lot of people that were in that courtroom were like, man, this guy seemed defeated at every pass. But the defense team did tell the jury, hey, we might not have all the answers, but the true story is going to come out when we put Brian on the stand. Well, Brian never went on the stand. So I think
originally he said that he was going to take the stand, or at least his defense says that he's going to. And then what it looks like is kind of at the 11th hour, right? He decides not to take the stand.
Yeah, and I think the prosecution, because you have no body, so we don't know how she was killed. I mean, you can speculate, well, maybe she was poisoned. Maybe he stabbed her to death. We don't know. I think you would know more if you went through those Google searches and went through them with a fine-tooth comb to figure out, like, what was he searching first. But then when you're hit with, hey, he disposed of her body and he dismembered her, there you go. I mean, to me, you go open and shut case. But again, I think some of it is confusion. And I can't remember if it was on court TV or something else, but some quote unquote expert was like, he had somebody else help him because dismembering a body is normally a 2-person job. What? I mean, out of all the things I heard in 2025, I think that's one of the dumbest things I've heard. We have plenty of situations where people have dismembered their victims by themselves.
Yes, we've covered a lot of cases, unfortunately, where dismemberment is part of the case, part of the crimes committed, and many, many times done as a solo act. And I think what you have to look at here too is nobody's with him on these trips, right? These trips that he's taking to collect materials, the trips that he's taking to dispose of materials, with the exception of his son being there for one of them, he appears to be by himself,
right?
On a lot of these trips. And it, unfortunately, however he was able to get rid of the evidence, that all took place inside that home, inside the family's home, very likely in the basement of that home. I mean, this is just a slimy dude. There's just something, I mean, of course, the murder, of course, the other crimes, but this, I just look at him and he's a slimy
Well, no,
dude.
and we've talked about this before. You have to be a certain type of person to dismember a body. And so I think somebody needs to look into his history more. Where did he go to university, where he worked? Is there any missing person? Is there any rumors of him dating somebody that just kind of disappeared? I wouldn't put it past him because this, like I said, takes a special individual. And then you have these crimes with the forgery. Okay, I'm going to paint this picture. I'm not saying that this happened, but his defense team, even other people were like, well, Anna told Brian that she had a crush on this individual. It later comes out, even in the trial, that this affair was confirmed. But they were saying, oh, well, he wasn't a jealous type. Well, he might not have been, because we don't have a body. We don't know the motive. I actually wonder, because like I said, when you were saying the story, how they had this gathering, I wonder if he tried to poison her, because it almost seems like people are hanging out and then she disappears, as far as like, well, she's going to go to bed. And then does some people leave and not say goodbye to her? And so like, think about that. Like, oh, we have this party and I poison you, but you collapse or die while there's other people around. Then they essentially somewhat become my alibi. So I'd wonder if there's any searches on any of these items for anything about poisoning a victim or not. But where my mind wanders is, did she have any involvement in these sales? I don't think that's maybe information that we could find. But is it something that he can't, because he's a slime ball, like you said. This guy is utterly a piece of shit. But did he come up with the idea and then explains to her the idea, and she goes, oh no, that's a good idea, and we could make a little bit of money, and that could start some of our real estate endeavors and blah, blah, blah. And then, because to me, it's like, again, I can see, if she's having an affair and okay, everybody knows that she told her husband that she had a crush on the guy. Did she eventually tell him that they had an affair? Is that the straw that broke the camel's back? Is that the motivation for him to kill her, behead her, dismember her, dispose of her? Or is it more than that?
I think it's probably all of the above. And the thing
Right.
that we can't, the obvious thing to point to here is, I agree with the prosecution when they're saying that we believe he was motivated not just by the affair, but also he's the sole beneficiary of Anna's $2.7 million life insurance policy. And remember, one of those Google
but see,
searches,
that's not what I have as the insurance policy. What I have as the insurance policy, or what he would have received, he would have been a benefactor of that, but also the 3 children would be, it's $220,000. It's twice her annual salary. So to me, that seems like a life insurance policy that is not extreme, right?
right?
And also, like, you have 3 young children, so it would make sense. I mean, I don't know where you're getting the $2 million. But again, you have a guy that his life before this was crashing all around him. He's going to lose his freedom for at least, okay, he's sentenced for 3. He's probably going to get out in a year and a half, maybe 2. Unless that's just like you get 3 years and there's no time off for good behavior. Plus, you're going to be monitored. Plus, you got to pay all this money back because of all these things, because you're a slime ball, because of all these things. Now you're losing your wife. You're going to lose custody of your kids. And then if she moves away because you're in prison, you can't stop that. If you get a divorce, and let's say you live in Ohio and your ex-wife gets custody of the kids and she wants to move to Michigan, she has to come up with some damn good reasons why she's going to take the kids away from the father. And that's something that the father can fight for. And it's actually something that the state is like, yeah, you're going to have to work out some kind of deal. Maybe even leaving the kids here and you not getting custody. Hey, we'll let you move and we'll let you take this work opportunity or whatever it is, but we're not going to let the kids leave. But when you're in prison, he wouldn't be able to fight for this. Like I said, sick son of a bitch is losing everything. I think on some level he wanted somebody else to suffer. I think he wanted somebody else to lose everything. And I think he took out his anger on his wife. Now, I think it was hard for the prosecution to come up with that story. And I think also the prosecution in the back of their head, they're going, well, we know he admitted to dismemberment and disposing of the body, but we can't say that. So it's this case is so weird and bizarre.
Yeah, I was pointing to the Google search of how long someone missing to inherit. So he's actively trying to figure out how long does this person have to be missing for before I can inherit the life. Because if the person's missing, they're not technically dead, right? As far as that contract goes for the life insurance. Now, it was NBC News that reported that it was a $2.7 million life insurance policy. At court, it was testified that by an insurance agent that Ana Walshe had a $1 million term life insurance policy and a $250,000 whole life insurance policy.
Okay.
Brian Walsh will not see a penny of that. What he's going to be seeing a lot of is a prison cell.
I want to thank everybody for joining us here in the garage each and every week. Getting cozy up in this bitch. It's always nice to, when you have a slime ball that does a horrific crime, to know that they're going to spend the rest of their life in jail and not just 3 years for art fraud. But make sure you check out truecrimegarage.com for everything true crime. Sign up on the mailing list and subscribe to Off the Record so you can get more true crime for your ear balls. Until next week.
A happy New Year to everyone. Be good, be kind, and don't let it.